Okay, so this is 100% not a joke. This is real, and it is madness. As a kid, we used to go to Greece every summer to visit family, right? And my dad felt like back then you get two checked luggages. My dad felt like if you didn't maximize the use of the checked luggages, it was a shame. And there's 4 of us in the family. Dude, we had 8 checked bags. We would be in the line for Lufthansa, and there were 8 identical Samsonite bags all stacked behind each other. And I used to have to grab them, drag them in twos as the line was moving to make room for the line, as my dad stood all frantic holding passports and stuff in the front of the thing. Yeah, that is, I have a lot of experience checking luggage.
So this is, for the record, this is also how I know where my flights are back home, because as soon as I go to the airport, when I'm looking around for, this is cancel time, but basically, when you get to the Middle Eastern flights, you will 100% see, I don't know, the flights going to certain places in the world will be just a couple of very, serious people with one little bag tightly packed up, very nice and very efficient, ready to go. And they're just, flowing through the line, just no problems whatsoever. And then you get to flights back to Yale, my mom's part of the world, and it's chaos, because exactly that's happened. You have a whole village of people who have maximized the use of their luggage requirements, and you see it just this little old man with this plastic wrapped giant. It's not even a suitcase; it's something that's like an L shape. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's horrific. That stuff.
Well, you got to maximize your value.
Dude,
you got to maximize your value. And listen, if you run a software service company and you are not enabling your customers to maximize their value, you're making a mistake.
I actually think that's an interesting segue where if you look at what's happened with...
Wait a minute. An interesting segue? That was perfect. That was flawless. Not interesting.
Learn to take a compliment. Man, Ed, the whole point is, look at what's happened on the... completely threw me off. I was going to make a point about basically the customer service and sales side of the airline industry completely shifting now. I mean, I think it's
really.
I think it's bananas. I think it's a horrible experience where you got to pay $5 if you want to get on board first.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have the extra, and they know their price points really well to get you to take action. So if you was looking at this, anybody listening to this, I've just moved from California to Colorado, and I had my whole kind of life packed up into 2 suitcases. So having you right there.
I have to feed my sourdough starter.
This always comes up. They had me priced really smartly, because basically the suitcase limit is 40 pounds. And filling a large suitcase of, I think, standard size full, I think will take you right past 40. It's very hard to judge where you're at unless you really want to go stand on a scale and hold the bags and do all this kind of stuff. But so to upgrade to 50 pounds is a certain price point, but then to upgrade to up to 100 pounds, that's the next level. And it's a really smartly, it's super manipulative, but they know how to get you. And they got me worried. So I upgraded to the $100 pound thing for $100, I think it was, or like something silly. But it's they know exactly the point, because do you really need an extra 10 pounds, or can you gauge it? Or should you just get full security for this price? I'm sure a lot of people upgrade like that.
They're doing this in Saas too. I mean, HubSpot's a prime example of this, where even within product lines, there's like, you end up in some part of the product where they're like, oh, you're not paying for this part. It's just like, oh my gosh. Also, now you're seeing this with AI. Every company that has implemented AI now just has it as an add-on to their like kind of main product line. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think you should figure out ways to expand the LTV of your customers for sure. But you're seeing it all over the place. And in some cases, it makes a lot of sense, like Notion implementing AI, ClickUp integrating AI and having $5 extra per user. It makes a lot of sense to me. But there's also examples where you're like, God, I just feel like this feature should have been included in the original product.
Yeah, it's like I said, it works. It works. It's not the end of the world, but honestly, man, it's not a great experience. I mean, do you walk away? Right. I mean, even with HubSpot, which I think is probably the best, the class, standard setter of the industry, they know their pricing perfectly. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
But you kind of wish that it was, those brands that are maybe they build up a little bit of more, I don't know, positive capital with you or something where it's like, I can't believe that I'm getting away with this. This is so valuable. I'm never leaving these people.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas with them, it's like, well, if somebody else comes along who kind of fulfills the same thing, but is like half price, I might jump,
Well, yeah, the greatest thing to happen over the past 10 years is how much easier it is to build products, because now, I was listening, just to go on a quick tangent here. I was speaking at Saas Open a couple of months ago. I forget actually when it was, but a few months ago, I was in New York and I was speaking at Saas Open, and Neil Patel was speaking. And I was kind of excited to hear Neil Patel's talk. He was talking about how to use software, how to acquire softwares in order to use them as lead gen for your real company, which I thought was kind of an interesting topic. I'm like, it feels very niche, but I'll go and listen to it. So I went in, and how he opens the presentation, or at least early on. Not that I feel like it was a very scripted presentation, but early on he does end up saying, he says, SaaS is a race to the bottom. And we say this in industries within SaaS, right? Like, what's a good example of this? Now I'm like totally blank. Data providers, it's a race to the bottom, right? Like Seamless.ai is what, $1,200 for the year? Like it's a race to the bottom. There's other products like that too, like probably email marketing tools, race to the bottom. MailChimp is free until you get to a certain point. And then after that, it's like what, $20 a month. Like these are inexpensive solutions. Also, you can go on AppSumo and you can buy an email automation tool for like $50 for a lifetime. So like a lot of these things are a race to the bottom. And Neil Patel's argument was you should be acquiring these software companies, make them basically free, do 80% of what the competitor that they pay $50 to $100 a month for, do at least 80% of that. And then all those leads, those are now that's lead gen. His argument also was you do very little marketing because the product is so good and it's free. They're also way more forgiving because they're willing, users are willing to deal with kinks if it's a free software. And he doesn't charge. He actually says don't charge. So, that's his, if you want to say pure to what he was saying. Anyway, so he was kind of making this argument. He does it. He owns, I think, 4 software companies that he's made free. I think one of them, there's a premium tier, but all the other ones are free. And they get 50,000 leads a month, if I remember right. It could be 30,000, but what's 20,000 amongst friends?
Who's counting?
Yeah. Who's counting? Let's say it's 40,000 leads a month. That all goes to his agency. There's no way, there's not a sales team in the world who can manage that many leads coming in every single month. Yeah, there are a Zoom, but outside of that, like unless you have a huge sales team, you're not effectively managing that much lead volume. Now, how qualified are all those leads? I'm not too sure. I know a lot of the products he buys are intended for people that they sell to, like small business owners. So maybe they're not too bad, but I do think it's incredible lead volume and a really interesting strategy.
It really is. And I think there's, as you're given the Neil Patel example, I think something else came to mind because there's, have you been following Beehive?
You brought them up to me. That's why I recognize this name. You brought them up to me. No, I've not been following them.
They're basically the team from Morning Brew went off and built an email marketing, ESP, email service provider that was essentially positioned and I think is positioned to compete with ConvertKit probably most directly as like being this creator friendly, email tool for professional creators, that sort of thing. And up until now, ConvertKit was really the dominant voice in the space. MailChimp was MailChimp and the others were kind of all floating around there. And ConvertKit had sort of popped up and Nathan Barry had done a great job of modernizing everything. And the guys from Beehive / Morning Brew, they came in and I think they had a really interesting strategy because instead of just coming in and building another good creator tool and just offering it for cheaper, which would be that race to the bottom, they came in and they did a good job of bundling the services that creators need and use today. So an example of this is it's basically they've taken a couple of sort of cherry picked a couple of things from a couple of very good tools, like for example Substack, for example ConvertKit. And what they've done is they've created a system where it is an email marketing tool. It's an email tool primarily, but it's also a blog. And if you think about how most people operate, like to run a full website, do you really want to do that as an average solopreneur creator? Probably not. And so they have everything. Kind of your emails are also your blog posts. Ghost did this also, but Ghost was very developer first. You have to know how to code really to use Ghost properly. And these guys kind of came in and took elements of each of the existing things out there, bundled them, and can still charge. I believe it's something like $500 a year at the lowest level to run probably the most competitive thing out there. And their growth chart is silly this year. I think they've been around for 18 months, man.
Really?
18 months, and they've just been blowing through everybody.
Why do you think they've done such a good job acquiring users? Because this is we also do this too type of product, and it's not the cheapest one on the market. I'm on their website.
Yeah, it's not.
Why do you think they've done well?
It's because it's the most ear to the ground, finger on the pulse of what creators actually need. So, for example, I'll walk into ConvertKit, for example, which I'm a big fan of ConvertKit, big fan of Nathan Barry. I think the company's done fantastic things. I still love them. We use them. But
yeah,
ConvertKit's templates are not great. That's why an ecosystem of template building has popped up around ConvertKit, where you can buy somebody's email template, design template for your email layout or what you want your email to look like. ConvertKit's landing page builders and whatnot, they're okay, but they haven't really changed much in the last 5 years. So it's kind of, I don't know. And when you look at the combination, I think, of the design you get right out the gate without having to do any coding, any tweaking, any whatsoever, you get a really, really solid little product. And I haven't used them properly. I signed up and I set things up just to test it out. But I'm not an active user of Beehive. But should I go off and start a little side project or something? Honestly, man, I think I would go straight to Beehive and just build everything there. And I wouldn't worry about having to cobble together systems. I wouldn't worry about putting together a little, it's a theme of the day. But
we learned a new word here, folks. For those listening, I have a big smirk on my face because we just stumbled upon the word cobbled and we happen to like it a lot. And now Dan is using it all the time.
I still like Frankenstein better, but it sounds a little bit more professional, I suppose, if we say something's cobbled together. But I think that's really the key is are you building this tool in the way that your end user really wants to use it? And if you're doing it better than the existing, big player in the market, sure, you're probably going to get their business, or at least have a good shot at stealing some of their customers.
Yeah. Do they also do a little website too? Do you get a website with this?
You do?
Or is it just is it a landing page where they put in their email, or is it actually a website?
No, you get a website. You basically get a blog. This is the
blog. Oh.
You get
it's kind of like Substack.
It's kind of like Substack. You see, exactly. It's a very interesting mix of ConvertKit, Substack. What else I say? There are a couple other tools that I feel like they've leaned on. But the UX is really Morning's Brew specialty. They know Morning's Brew the whole thing was, news in 5 minutes. That was their whole, shtick. And they've had a great design team on board. They have a course that they sell that's, and I think it's at least $1,000, if not more, on, email marketing and whatnot. So they monetize in a bunch of different ways. And the guys running it are, I think, doing something really special. So it's an interesting kind of thing happening live.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Monetizing in a couple of different ways. So this is something I'm starting to see SaaS companies do a lot more. So the first, I've definitely seen it a bunch of times, but the one that really stood out to me was Lemlist. So there's a tool called Lemlist. For those of you who don't know, it's a software tool that you could use to send automatic cold emails and a bunch of other stuff. There's a bunch of features, but it's essentially a kind of a cold email tool that outbound SDR teams can use to send out emails. Okay, so that's Lemlist. What they ended up doing was creating a course on how to write really strong cold emails, and they did this huge webinar. I think G said, if I remember right, 1,500 people showed up to the webinar. bananas, like crazy. 1,500 people were there. And I was one of them. And on the webinar, he pitches this cold email masterclass. And the cold email masterclass is supposed to be $500, but man, you're lucky you're one of the 1,500 people sitting here today because we have a deal for you. And he slashes it down to whatever and ends up being like $200. I bought it. I think it's a good course. That was interesting. They made a pretty good amount of money on that. They did pretty well with that. And they've then since done it again. And there's this idea of there's really two things here. One is outside of just another software product, how else can you monetize the audience that you're capturing with your primary software product? And that's something that I find very interesting. And something like, for example, that we're doing here in the reverse order, where we have a consulting company and we've done a great job building an audience, and people like us, they respect us, they consume our content. We get a lot of positive feedback on that content. Well, at the end of last year, we acquired a software company that does sales, and it's kind of an AI co-pilot to better understand your sales data and give you direction on what you need to focus on improving. It's called Nova. And that is an example of us saying, hey, we already have distribution. Like, let's now pull in a software product that we can offer to our audience once it's ready, offer to our audience. And that's just another revenue channel. Can we sell online courses? Now, a consultant selling online courses, you can draw that line pretty easily. But a software company doing it, well, Lemless just did it. They had a lot of success. I think we're going to see a lot more of this moving forward.
Well, I think the originator of that in some way was probably HubSpot, because if you think about it, and I don't think it's gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. But what HubSpot did brilliantly was to put out this free certifications, so a free academy, where, I remember going through it. I said, oh, like finally, like who certified me as a copywriter before? Like, I can point to a portfolio, but I didn't have any certification. So it was an interesting thing going back, whatever years ago, and to sort of say, oh, I can go put a little badge on my, whatever, LinkedIn. Right. Google does the same thing, arguably, where it's like free training in order to theoretically, if you get the training and you learn it through our platform, it's a way of delivering you the value, blah, blah, blah.
But I'm actually talking about more paid.
I know. So that's what the jump is. So I think if you look at how now smaller companies have looked at that and said, well, okay, that email certification you paid for, you got for free, that you didn't pay for, is it worth something to you? Would you have paid for it? And the answer is probably yeah. And if you think about, getting something set up, when I'm shopping around on, for these, going back to Beehive for a second on the email marketing tools and whatnot, if I was a sort of newbie kind of going around, it's again the idea of like, if I have to pull systems together, if I have to cobble them together, it's the idea of having to jump around from website to website. And then, okay, I trust this person over here, but what about that person? Are they good? It's a lot of mental energy to sort of get together. And then oftentimes you'll learn the concept, but you won't know the platform. And then you have to then try to transfer knowledge from one platform into another platform. And it is horrific. But if one platform can do that for you, can genuinely train you, can give you that value, and you know how to use the tool, frankly, it's even good for, I'd take it a step further. If I was starting, let's say I was in my early 20s and I was starting my consultancy all over again. One of the first things I would do is look for a system like this that is a paid platform that with relatively sophisticated, depth. Klaviyo, I don't know how to say it, but the Shopify / e-commerce, email marketing company. It's the one for e-commerce basically. They do a great job of this, where they know that a professional coming in here has to go through quite a lot of training to really become good at e-commerce email best practices, and suddenly that makes them a specialist. So if I'm in that market, if I'm, let's say, starting an e-commerce email marketing consultancy, and I know I'm a Klaviyo expert, well, guess what? You just massively up my chances of getting hired at a high rate as a specialist. You might feature me on the Klaviyo experts, for example. Shopify does this for Shopify, web store builders or whatever. And I think that ConvertKit sort of does the same thing. They have a couple of sort of outsourced experts who are out there, like Jason Resnick. But so I think basically these tools have the opportunity to afford you great performance if you learn how to use them properly. So it's in their benefit to train you. but also a lot of people out there are perfectly willing to pay for that training because it comes back not just for better emails and to run a better thing, but even to run their own entire consulting business by becoming experts in your tool. It's an endless cycle of pulling people into your ecosystem deeper and deeper if you want to.
Yeah, well, it's great. Great point. And I didn't even think about, what is the company? Squarespace does the same thing where they have a network of web designers who know how to web design with Squarespace, for example. And I think it's really pretty clever. I got approached by a company that was a competitor of Outreach. So like a, kind of an email automation, cold calling, all of that kind of stuff platform. And it's a sales engagement tool is what that category of tools called. Anyway, they approached me and they wanted basically for me to do the same thing with them, where it's just like, hey, we don't want to do any of the kind of strategic side of the outreach. We just want to provide the software, but we have a lot of people who ask us to help them on the strategic side, like developing messaging, what should their approach, what should their sequences look like, that kind of stuff. And I said yes, but no one has been sent over to me. So I don't know if they're actually doing this or not. But kind of a clever idea because one, it's potentially deepening the relationships that you're having with your end user. Because the more invested you are in a platform, the harder it is emotionally to rip it out, because you're like, I have so much stuff. And it's kind of like a go high level with us. It's like, I have so many things built out in there. It would be really rough for me to have to migrate that over. So there's certain tools like that. So I think that's useful. Then it also helps spread the word a little bit more because you have these experts who are also talking about the product.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought exercise for I think any SaaS business. I mean, we have friends in the architecture SaaS space, for example. I mean, even just doing training specifically for architects to get better using their platform, that makes a ton of sense.
Now, wouldn't they normally charge that up front? Like it's part of the onboarding, you get this training thing?
It could be. I mean, but that's the nice thing about basically productizing some of the value of what you get is that you never know what the right time is for the right person. So, maybe I'll give you this example. This is not a paid thing, but it's one where some company does something so good that it just becomes industry standard where you have to go through there. Like, for example, HubSpot's, this is often free stuff. I know, so I'm getting off track here for a second, but HubSpot's certifications were like, you should go get one. Google, same thing. If you want to show that you know your stuff on SEO or ads or whatever, or Google IQ, I think was what the program is called. But on the industry standard for a while that everybody would refer to, or a lot of people would refer to in my world for style guides was MailChimp's style guide. And MailChimp made it very easy, free to everybody, and it's still up, and it's still probably, I think, the best style guide out there because it's so easily readable. And it's so useful. And it's if you've never seen a style guide before, it's not suddenly a PDF of fancy crap that you have to sift through. It's very clear. Boom, 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 boom. Tab through it. It's fantastic. If you haven't checked it out, we'll put it in the comments or in the description here. But I think if you think about it, if you can become the industry standard where people just refer to your content, because that's what it is. It's a form of your content beyond the tool itself. And look, if an architect wants to come to me, and let's say I run this SaaS company, they want to come to me and use the tool, great. And if they want to come to me and just use my free content, also great. And never buy from me, that's okay. But usually there's some sort of thing. If I can really create this lifetime, long-term view of, I would never leave these people until something really fantastic comes along. I mean, that's how I felt about ConvertKit for a long time. I mean, ConvertKit was, they were so on point. Every time some other competitor would do something really stupid with pricing, Nathan Barry would hit Twitter really hard immediately and say, hey, I know what's happening over there. If you guys come over here, we've got this just, exactly what you need and that they're screwing up. They did this against Drip because Drip changed their pricing and it was an insane move. Gumroad did the same thing. And in both cases, ConvertKit was ready and just, said, hey guys, look, I know what you're actually looking for. Come over here. We'll give it to you. It's that kind of thing. It creates this really good, positive feeling, especially if you just watch it happen in real time. It makes you really feel loyal to the brand. And rightfully so. It's not an empty feeling. It's got substance to back it up.
So I want to go back to when you brought up kind of training, and I mentioned that it could be part of onboarding. I'm going to make a bold claim. I think I'm right for everybody, but I won't speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself. With the acknowledgement that I'm probably right. I think having premium onboarding or premium training as an add value to whatever product that you're selling is absolutely worthless to the consumer. I put essentially zero weight on whatever they call their onboarding program that they're trying to charge for, their training program they're trying to charge for. I put zero weight on it. It's one of those things I want them to remove. It is terrible. I've been through several companies, and you'd think the best of the best would be HubSpot. I have had so many clients use HubSpot's little onboarding thing, and it'd be a total disaster. They always suck. I've never seen somebody do it well. And even if they do it okay, it was never something worth paying for. So here is my proposal. Since consumers, since I, but probably most consumers, don't really value the training and the onboarding stuff that much, why not give people the option of a little marketplace of people who can come in and help you either make the most out of your system through training your entire team? Hey, we do our basic training. If you want to do anything over there, here's a marketplace of people. You want more custom onboarding where it's a lot more hands-on and maybe you have to do a whole bunch of custom stuff and automations and whatnot, integrations. Here's our marketplace. And as the software company, we're not, we're going to do our onboarding, we're going to do our normal thing, but anything beyond the scope of our onboarding, we have a marketplace of people versus pretending like they cover it all. And then you go through the system and you end up, I'm going through this with QuickBooks. This is another reason why I'm getting all mad. So I just signed up for QuickBooks. We're switching our things. And I went through their onboarding. I was slacking Dan throughout the whole thing. I was like, this is the worst onboarding I've ever been on. The guy gets on the call and I'm like, I don't have a lot of patience for people who I feel like can't figure things out, so I'm like, it just drives me nuts. And this guy was the epitome of, I can't figure anything out. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was asking about automated invoicing. It's like a simple question. He's just like, I had no clue. Basically, his job was to go through his little training script, teaching me how to categorize an invoice. I don't even need a training for that. I can just figure that out by clicking a couple buttons, right? So I was getting very frustrated. He ended up transferring me to support in the middle of our onboarding call. He's like, let's get support in the mix. So then transferred me over to support. And then I spoke to one person, then another person. And one of the people that I was on with support, she put me on mute to try to figure something out. And I heard her talking to herself about how confused she was. And then she's like, I guess I'm just going to have to watch this video. And then she started playing some video. I hung up on her. I just hung up on her. I said, I'm going to figure it out myself. And I figured it out myself. Anyway, not to get all preachy and complaining, but the reason why I bring this up is because I don't think consumers value it all that much because we've all had those experiences.
But isn't that in the quality of the train? Here's my take is I think that mostly it's a quality issue because you're trying to say, well, I don't know who you are really. Because I'm QuickBooks, let's say. I'm here for every small business in the universe. And if I then am going to try to give you an accounting, bookkeeping type of course to cover every small business in the world, holy crap, that's going to be a horrible experience for you, the user, to sit through a DIY course like that. Probably it's bad training for your internal reps. But if you splice it out a little bit and you were to say, look, we have a 1 hour course or, even shorter than that, specifically for consulting companies that are less than 20 people, something like that are, being ultra specific in B2B, for example, to fit our model. Or we have, QuickBooks for restaurants in 1 hour. And that comes it's only the stuff that you need. I think that's what a lot of the stuff is a lot of fluff that then turns into a lot for me, the consumer, to digest. And then it's very hard for the rep who lives inside of the QuickBooks support to then also teach to the person because they're not very well trained in any one part. They're very much generalists. But I also think that when it comes down to it, you're thinking about having a marketplace of people to do this. That's why one of our mutual friends, I think we're talking about, used to go to Fiverr and just hire somebody, and just say to that person, look, I'm not a coder. I don't know how to do this technically, but if I pay you $100 or whatever, I want to sit with you and do a screen share, and you walk me through how to do something. And you walk me through exactly how to build my campaign, for example, or you walk me through how to redo my WordPress site, or you walk me through how to do something where it's a very focused task and it's something repeatable that I plan to do in the future. I know I'm almost guaranteed that I'm going to get the result that I want out of this. I have a screen recording that's trained almost exactly to my website or my needs. And so I think it's something in the specificity of things where a lot of people who are, and we know this, courses, what's the course completion rate? Something like less than 1%, right? If that's the case, then maybe courses are not the end all be all. If I just have a general course to help everybody with sales ever, now go do the course by yourself. I'm not sure if that's really the best experience for somebody coming in cold.
Yeah, well, I'm talking beyond courses. I'm talking about an actual hands-on onboarding of the customer. So almost all SaaS companies, at least at a certain average sale price or average ACV, they're going to do a hands-on onboarding. They try to charge for it, which is blasphemy in my view, because I just don't value these things. But even when, first of all, it's in the company's best interest to onboard me correctly. It's in their best interest. That should just be part of the thing. Now, sometimes you do have to charge for onboarding because it is a lot of work to implement your solution. And look, don't, take what I say for who I am, whatever. Like, I've worked with a lot of these companies, but I'm definitely not the only consumer on the planet. I'm just saying, I think most people don't value onboarding. And the only way you get away with charging for it is if you give them no other choice and you are genuinely the best option. But the reality is there's a lot of options. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of price negotiations, especially today, that I just don't think this is going to last all that long. So I think we need to be a little bit more creative on how we manage this.
So, understood. And I'm totally with you on this because I actively avoid this stuff. What I think is interesting is the onus of who the pressure is on when it comes to these calls, because me going out to, let's say, ConvertKit's experts or Fiverr or something and saying, hey, look, something's goofy with the visual automations. I know the basics around it. Something's not working for me. I can't tell what it is. Can I do that whole thing that I just told you? I'm going to pay you $100 to come and you walk me through exactly how to set up my system. That's kind of what onboarding should be like anyways, to some degree. Is something, and it's in there. But whereas if you come to me as the company or as a salesperson and you tell me blindly, hey, are you ready to give up an hour of your time or 20 minutes of your time or whatever it is to come in and get onboarded? That feels so. It's the same kind of idea, but one is very attractive to me and one is very unattractive to me. And I think that it comes back to, like, if you look at how sales demos are often asked for by people, by companies, by reps, I think it stays in very vague general land where it's like, hey, it's going to be great. You're going to get onboarded. I'm going to give you all this value. You're going to sit down. We're going to talk through all this stuff about your business. But there's something a little bit, I don't know what scary is the wrong word, negative, where I don't necessarily want to give up an hour of my time where I don't know exactly what the agenda is. I don't know. I'm guessing that it's not going to be exactly tailored to my needs. And the more specificity you give that, maybe it becomes better. Maybe it is a thing where you line up, the 13 bullet points that we're going to cover in onboarding ahead of time. Maybe that's a way to soften the blow a little bit. It certainly would be with demos.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you a good example of onboarding. Okay. The best onboarding I've ever gone through, it was with Superhuman. Mm-hmm. They're kind of known for this. They're known for how good their onboarding is. And mind you, Superhuman is not a tool that you heavily customize. You may do a couple of things, but it's a tool to better run your email. They, if I remember right, they don't give you access to the product until you've gone through onboarding. So you don't even. Yeah, they don't. And I don't know what they're doing now, but this is back, I've been using Superhuman for 2 years. So anyway, they don't give you access to the product. You get to your little onboarding call. You're all excited for it. You're like, I'm going to get Superhuman. Every founder, I don't know what's going on outside. Can you hear that?
A little bit, yeah.
My gosh, there's just some guy revving a motorcycle nonstop. Like he's not even driving anywhere. Okay, now I think he left. Sorry about that, folks.
The wild streets of Pleasanton.
Yeah, I know what's going on. This used to be a nice neighborhood, and then they moved in. Just superhuman. So I get to my onboarding call, right? And I'm kind of you're excited because like you had people tell you it's mandatory. You have to have superhuman, like every founder you talk to. So I sit down, and so the guy pops up on the screen, right? And he's like, "Hello," and he's the most amped up. I've not seen somebody so excited to onboard me. And I go, "Hi," not prepared for this. And he goes, "Are you ready for your superpowers?" And I felt like I was in a Disney movie. I was like, "I think, yes, I am. Yes." And he goes, "All righty, well, let's go ahead and log right in." And then I had to like share my screen. He told me where to click. He's going, click there. And now here's the thing. And he's like just amping every feature up to me. And I'll tell you, by the end of the whole thing, I learned everything I needed to know about Superhuman. I could ask questions during it. So it wasn't like fully, like it was definitely a heavily scripted thing. But I did ask questions throughout it. And man, that was the best experience I had. It was a 30-minute onboarding. I walked away knowing how to use the product. I customized the different splits for the different things that I have. He walked me through the whole thing. Like I said, 30 minutes. It was wonderful.
I think that's a really interesting example. I didn't know that. I also didn't know that Superhuman was known for their onboarding. I think it's a really interesting thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier today, actually, that might be relevant here. But there are certain things that carry over beautifully from customer success and customer service and the customer support even in that territory of the world, which is by itself also different pieces. But that general territory to sales as a general territory, to marketing as a general territory, how do you develop good relationships with people? What is the right person to put in front of me right now? Am I the right person to put in front of you right now? Am I going to be able to deliver the experience? Do I really understand the experience that I want to create for this person really perfectly at this moment? And I think it's a lot harder, frankly, digitally. And especially when people have Zoom or just any kind of screen shares off where you don't see the person's face. If I was in person with you and I was walking you through, I don't know, a restaurant menu or we used to do this when we were selling beer. People would be walking through the liquor stores and we'd be doing demos there. And if you're in person with somebody, it's very hard to miss this, really. I think it's a lot easier to do this. Yeah. A lot of people kind of, I don't know, maybe they're going through numbers on the employee side, on the SaaS company side. Maybe, the user it's kind of been awkwardly timed. I'm doing this during my lunch hour. I'm kind of eating a sandwich while you're trying to walk me through something. There's distractions. And then you're tired. And especially, we've talked about this about Zoom calls. If you can make it great if the energy's up and if you're both kind of vibing and that's why you should be trying, right? But it's also 98% of the calls that I'm on are me desperately trying to, often even if I'm the recipient of or the customer, where I'm like, all right, man, let's go. Come on. Why don't you have some more energy here? And
it's so important. You have to wake everybody up. I mean, how many times have you seen me hop into a Zoom call and just absolutely rattle everybody in there? Because it's horrible.
My favorite memory, I think, this is definitely top 3 of you, is when we had a client call with a client on another part of the world, which is a very different time zone, and it was a little bit late for them. It was a little bit awkward timing for us, but we made it work. And as we were kind of all coming into the call, everyone was, "Oh, hello," being professional and standard, very normal. And you came in, Kyle, and you were like, "All right, so how's everybody doing?" And then the CEO's response was, no, pretty good. Everything's great. Yeah, it's just we're just kind of winding the day down a little bit here. And your response right away, right on the spot was, "Well, I'm here to wind you right back up, baby." And it was just you could see the collective shock on everybody's faces, where everybody's kind of like on the way down. I'm like, okay, here we go, another call, just jolt up, and that's the kind of stuff where it's so easy to do. And if you're, we say this with you talk about cold calling all the time, but I think it's true for writing too. When we talk with our clients, if you're standing up, you can easily pump your energy up a little bit for a call. Like, come on. This is so doable.
Not even a little bit. No, this is the most important thing, especially in leadership. Are you crazy? Going into a call with your team and being sluggish?
It's the worst, man.
Who wants to work with that clown?
Nah.
Nobody. Like, you need to be a beacon of energy. And you need to be, if you're not excited, why the fuck would anybody else be excited?
I think there's so many examples of people will crap on somebody for being like a little bit goofy or a little bit weird or doing like a little stupid prop thing. I would rather work with that person who's high energy and might be silly and might be a little bit weird and might be whatever. That's a little bit non-standard. I'd rather work with that person much more than the person who's just going to be like, well, okay, I'm going to read you a book now and I'm just going to do it in a monotone voice and I'm just going to talk like this. And I hate that. And if all day, if that's what your meetings are like, it's no wonder your experience is going to suffer, whether it's an actual internal meeting, a client meeting, an onboarding call, any of that stuff. That's what the norm is. And it's horrible.
Yeah. This is a great way of putting it. That's what the norm is. The normal is, I have Zoom fatigue. Oh, it's been a long day.
Bullshit, by the way.
Oh my gosh, dude. One, I don't like working with people who are like that. It burns me out. Two, I will never be that person. Now, look, it's one thing like you're talking around the water cooler, so to speak, but if I'm hopping on a meeting with my team, I'm bringing as much energy as possible. Like Dan just moved to Denver, for those of you listening, but Dan used to work out of the office here. And dude, there've been times where I don't feel like doing whatever the next meeting is. And it was just you and I there. And I'm like, I'm dreading doing another Zoom call. But I'll hop on the Zoom call and I act like I'm the most excited for the Zoom call. So you just have to. If not, the experience that your team is going to have, and I'm speaking from a leadership perspective, is that you're like weirdo, sluggish, not fun, boring, not excited, not inspiring. Like that's what you want? No, of course not. As a leader, you want people to be inspired, that you want them to be excited about working with you. That's so important to manage through all of that. And your energy levels are so controllable. I get you're tired. Boo-hoo. We might have to fake it for an hour-long Zoom meeting. Go take a break afterwards. Like it's just, there's no excuse in my mind.
So for anybody thinking that this is just some rah-rah culture bullshit, I have narcolepsy. So just for the record, if anybody is talking about being tired and being and shutting down and doing all this stuff, I literally have narcolepsy. I'm the person who will fall asleep. Kyle's seen me in all kinds of awkward situations where I've just been like, all right, this is like I'm out, boom. But to be able to, if I can do it, frankly, I think a lot of people can do it, where totally. You can, a couple little tricks that we always, Kyle, I totally stole this from you, by the way, but I do this on some of the copywriting sessions on Thursday mornings when I go through with some of the reps in our community, where it's like, all right, are we feeling a little bit down? No, come on. Everybody up, talk. Loud, get a little loud, shoulders back, let's go, baby. And let's get a little weird. And just, liven up a bit. And I can just, even as I was doing this right now, I could feel it in my body. And these are things that are, you can dismiss them at your risk, basically. And it's, I think it's, you can say, yeah, whatever. It's just some short-term kind of hacky stuff, maybe. But I'll tell you what, I know that writers' quality goes massively up if they are standing up, if they are actively thinking about their stuff, if they're actually not thinking too much and just hammering out, speaking by dictation instead of just writing, doing it as a group, shutting up for 5 minutes, basically changing state constantly. And then obviously off call, once we hang up, by all means, take a nap, go take a walk, do whatever you have to do to be a little bit different. But this whole thing about Zoom stuff, it's people just lumped into it as like, oh yeah, another Zoom call. Well, yeah, if you make it boring for yourself, then it sucks. I mean, there's so many. We have an ongoing joke. I don't think you know about this, Kyle, but like inside the marketing team, like we've done this a few times where we've shown up with like the dumbest filters that we could possibly have on, right? And like it's a stupid little. I get it. It's a dumb thing, but it's a nice little way to like just be a little bit different. Because if I was in person with you, I would probably have a lot more energy than if I'm sitting in a room and I just click the on button and I have the camera off. This thing about camera, by the way, I don't real quick on this too. You said this recently and I didn't say I agreed with you on this. I am so much in agreement with you. The idea that the top performers who come to our coaching classes, right? Why don't you make the point? Who are the top performers in our coaching classes?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we do a coaching call every day of the week. And those attendees of those coaching calls are either founders / leadership team, or it's the actual reps. So the SDRs and AEs at the companies that we work with. And they're great. They're grouped across multiple different companies. We all learn from each other. They're a lot of fun. We track progress, and they're not like, it's not like I'm doing a webinar. It's a lot of back and forth. It's, there's not very many people. We're all asking questions, working together. So they're a lot of fun. And what I have noticed is the top performing reps are the ones who have their cameras on for that. I don't tell them to put their cameras on. Actually, I posted this on LinkedIn, Dan, which is why you're bringing it up. I posted this on LinkedIn that the top performing reps are always the one who has their cameras on, and also they're the ones who have stuff that they have to ask, right? But they always have their camera on. I posted it on LinkedIn because I know a lot of the people in our program follow me on LinkedIn. I can't wait till next week for me to see how many of them have a freaking camera on.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. But just to like go back to just, I guess if we were to put a pin on this entire discussion, there's, as a leader, which you and I both are of our own teams, and maybe if you're listening, you're a leader too. As a leader, the most important variable is how you make your team feel. It's so important. Are you holding them accountable? Do they feel like they're learning and growing from you? Do they feel like you are helping them progress in their career? How are you making them feel? Do they enjoy working with you? Do they feel like you're a positive force in their life? It is the most important thing. And now you might say, well, what isn't making sure that they execute important? Yeah. But the feeling is what really drives the execution. If not, your turnover is going to be high, right? We all know the asshole is like, work, right? How many people, the turnover is crazy. How you make your people feel is so critical that if you show up to a Zoom meeting and you aren't ecstatic to be there, why would they be? And you hurt your reputation every time you do that. We all have off days for sure. But as a general rule, you should strive to enter every single meeting with enthusiasm, with delight, and with excitement so that it transfers to everyone else on your team. Because I can tell you, there is nobody on our team who would ever join a call with me without having their energy up. Because they know they're going to actually be pulling Kyle down, because every call that Kyle's on, he's really high energy. And I'm not going to be the Eeyore in the room, all sad and, big weirdo. So anyway, not to get preachy, but I do think it's really important, something I take incredibly seriously.
I love it when you dip into children's book analogies. Was that a Winnie the Pooh reference? Love it.
It was
wonderful.
It was. Classic Winnie the Pooh reference.
No, it's funnier whether you use them actively or that I know them, and I am the childless one here. But I think on that point, just to go back for a second.
Actually, side note, real quick before you continue, I just want to be clear. I don't read Winnie the Pooh to my kids. I don't even think we have one Winnie the Pooh book in our house. Yeah, we don't. This isn't because I didn't use it because I had kids. I use it because everyone knows who Eeyore is, and nobody wants to spend the day hanging out with Eeyore.
Weird curveball, but appreciate you pointing it out.
Yeah, well, we read philosophy books in my house.
Oh, you think he's joking? He's not, by the way. Just an FYI. I have seen is she 5 years old now, your daughter? I've seen her walking around.
She turned 6 at the end of this year.
Yeah, I've seen her walking around with a little bit of stoicism going. It's bananas. But
she literally said to Dan a couple of weeks ago, or Dan heard her say this. She said, I said, well, what can you do in those situations? And her response is, control my emotions.
Dude, it was impressive. She was having a little moment, and you go, control my emotions. Like, oh crap, you're building a Terminator over here. This is terrifying.
One step at a time. Yeah, but, she's AI at this point.
But I do want to point out something about this whole thing with energy and with I don't know, performance and just basically being engaged. If you go back to school days, I think that you can see this with teachers and children, and teachers and students, I suppose. But if you look at the best teachers who I had in my life, they were all intense about something, and some of them were not the happiest people in the world. Some of them were pretty intense people the other way, but they were intense, and they would bring the energy into the room, and you would snap your ass up, and you'd be engaged. And of the people I'm thinking, only one was, let's say, intense in a little bit of a scary way, but I still appreciate their stuff. Everybody else is very, very positive, and it creates something really special because at least if you're even semi-engaged, you want to show up for this stuff. You want to go to the lecture. You want to pay attention. You want to do the work you want to make the teacher proud. There's all these kinds of weird things that are baked in there. And I think from the teacher side too, if you are looking at your students and you're seeing a bunch of people who just got their backs turned or doing something else or kind of all over the place and whatever, kind of brings you down too, unless you're a real monster. But the idea of I had one teacher who, for the students who were just totally disengaged, I remember first day of the course, it's actually in college, the professor was like, look, if you're going to screw around or you're not going to listen or you're going to just here to just because you're here for the sake of getting the credit, I don't care. I genuinely don't care. Don't come to class. And you'll come study by yourself, show up and then come for the exam. And who knows, maybe you'll get an A. I don't care, but I also don't really want to hang out with you. Whereas if you're going to be in on it with me, you're going to be in on it with me. And we're going to have the best goddamn lectures that you'll ever experience at this university. And he was not wrong. The dude was incredible. He was one of those professors that had this course that everybody had to go through, basically. It's like, you know what I mean? It had to go through, like everybody wanted to sign up for. No, it wasn't mandatory. That's the thing. That's what I misspoke. So it was not mandatory. It was an anthropology class of all things. And so I had nothing to do with my major, but because he was so kind of like famous at college, it's kind of like if you're in the wards. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good, maybe a good clarification here too is we're not saying you have to be like jolly at every call. So I'm going to give an example from a client of ours. I won't use their name, even though if he was listening, he knows that this is a big compliment, but he's very intense, the CEO of that company, very intense, beyond intense. And he holds people to a very high standard and he calls out things that he doesn't think is going well. I mean, like he is intense. Now, I do sometimes think he goes a little too far, and I would say that I would say that to him. So I'm not speaking out of turn, but for the most part, I think he's fantastic, and he has this intensity about him. He really cares about things being done right. He cares about progress. He holds people accountable. I think that's still good. I'm not saying you have to be jolly, but I am saying you need to make sure that you're present, that you want to be there. That this is an important thing for you to be at. That's really, I think, the key here.
If you want people to be engaged, you better goddamn be sure that you're engaged. And I think it bleeds down 100%. And I think I know what you're talking about. And I think you're spot on there. But you and I tend to be, I think we both like to goof around and we're jokey for a lot of, I think we default to that a lot. But when it comes down to stuff, where we've both gotten hot at various points over specific things that had to be called out. So do your job, obviously. But totally. But I do think that's everybody has a default that they go to. Lean into it and just make sure that you actually, I don't know, bring the goddamn energy. I think it's something you really can do. Anybody can.
Yeah, totally agree with this. Probably a good place for us to wrap it up here, huh?
Sounds good, man. Good seeing you. This is our first totally remote podcast. So,
Dan, why don't you close out with with your poem?
With the poem that I wrote? You know what, man? I think I want to sit on it for next time. I think it's pretty emotional for me, and also this is. I like that you're trying to make me feel awkward on camera. It's not going to work, man. I'm numb to the Van Voice effect.
Well, no, it's first of all, it's powerful. I think you've done good work, and we'll read it one day on the pod if enough people ask.
One day when it's actually written.
Poem book.
For sure.
What are you talking about? All right, Dan. Well, we'll talk soon.
Take care, Kyle. See ya.
Bye.